Good afternoon, YouTube. This morning I woke up and I found that my channel had received a copyright notice, a copyright claim, which is a legitimate action, I suppose. But what interested me the most was that it was on my video about this individual, Jessica Allen, and it says that the copyright owner is Bell Media. I'm sure you can see it right there. And that the copyright owner's policy is blocked in all territories. Video cannot be seen or monetized. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to monetize this. But what I find coincidental is that it's blocked during the precise moment in which Jessica Allen is giving her racist and hate speech rant, let's call it, to prevent my viewers from seeing it farther. So I thought I'd remake the video, of course, but essentially I would show, well, I'd remake the video and then I would go on again about how I felt about this particular reprehensible comments that she's made. So let's get into it. She talked about Don Cherry for only the pretense of attacking white male hockey player children and their families for making the investment and for joining in hockey, and perceiving that as a waste of time from her perspective. She'd rather that those people spend the money on traveling, for instance. So as I said in the previous video, I think that she was extremely racist and extremely sexist, because hockey, as you know, my fellow Canadians, if you're watching, or Americans, it doesn't matter, we incorporate women in that sport just as readily as we incorporate men. So it's like, what do you mean by it's only white male children that are like... So she's extremely sexist as well. I know many female hockey players that have been very successful. So describing hockey players as white boys and bullies while scolding parents for spending money on the sport. So essentially, I don't know how many of you have seen the video already, but I encourage you to go and watch it on Rebel Media, whom was the original source for the content that I found on this person. But Jessica Allen strikes me as one who is extremely irresponsible as an individual. What consequence does she suffer for these hate speech comments, the real hate speech? Don Cherry's hate speech it wasn't even... Forgive me for calling it that. It wasn't hate speech. It wasn't even racist speech. It was a calling to acknowledge the fact that our tradition of the poppy is not respected and does not hold the same prestige as it did in the past. And people need to be aware of that. Especially immigrants coming to this country, they must adopt Canadian values and value the original idea that made Canada great, that made Canada free, and by extension, the soldiers that defended that peace, that freedom. So it's important for us to uphold and respect the traditions. But this individual, she thought it would be beneficial to her to make political hay, so to speak, while the sun shines. And essentially, she used the moment to spew out a lot of nonsense, and especially how she would attack hockey player families and hockey player children as people who were not smart, people who were bullies, and people who essentially are wasting their money. She doesn't like hockey. That's kind of what she was trying to put across. She is hatred of hockey, more or less. So I found it extremely offensive. And I think Canada should reject her, essentially, because she is not in line with what the Canadian values, really. You know, I look at it, she's a nobody, essentially. The social itself is a channel in which propagates hatred and that kind of leftist ideology that's what they're cooking up on the social. And I feel very strongly that they should be held to account, but especially her. Her consequence, her punishment for her actions should be that she loses her job. Because if Don Cherry can be fired for... It's not even... He never even said anything to the degree of severity that she did. She actually created a racist statement and a sexist statement, and by extension, hate speech in her statement. And Don Cherry's statement was misconstrued and taken out of context, I believe. And I saw it in the media, especially with her interpretation. That was definitely taken out of context. And she managed to incorporate climate change in it, which had nothing to do with the conversation. So it was pathetic and stupid, and she should be held to account. And that punishment should be that CTV and the social should fire her. And they should issue a public apology for her statements and distance themselves from her. But the fact that they don't is very telling that they don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in upholding the values and the great traditions of this country. That's what I take away from that. And the fact that Bell Media is trying to block, take a look here, there it is. Bell Media is blocking this and exactly the exact time of that clip, so that I can't show you the moment in which she is disgracing herself and Canada, this Jessica Allen. She should be fired. She must be fired. Because that's the proper thing to do with people that issue that kind of speech, that kind of radical nonsense that she spews out. She considers there's a tone of superiority, a tone of arrogance about her, that her opinion is the only thing that matters. She's nonsense and a nobody. And I firmly believe that she should be held to account. She should be fired. That should be the penalty for talking in that way, and using the circumstance to attack hockey player children. Right? It's disgraceful. How dare she call herself a Canadian? That's not in line with what a Canadian is, right? And even on that panel, her little friend called her great Canadian. She is not a great Canadian. She should be rejected by Canadians. Her behavior is disgraceful to Canada. Don Cherry, that's a great Canadian. There's a Canadian that I admire, not her. She's nonsense. The fact that she can get away with talking in this manner, that's disgusting. I'm sure that many families that by chance heard her statement, they will be deeply insulted by that. Because hockey is much more than a sport to some of those families. It's a way of life. They dedicate their lives to that sport. It's an ideal, really. You know, she can pretend it means nothing, but by that mentality, you know, nothing means nothing either. So everything means nothing. Her interpretation of the thing had no backbone. If you look at how a little bit scrutinize her statement, you find it's empty words. She tried to play the victim card for the sake of her arrogance. People like that, it's disgraceful. They should never, she should never have that position on the TV to spew out her message of nonsense and hatred, because that's what it is. It's just, the post that she has been given, that she has responsibility for, she should not have that post. That position that she holds should be handed over to somebody who's more responsible. But of course, the social promotes that kind of talking, that kind of nonsense. But now they try to hide. See that? They blocked me. I can tell them, I can retort, you know, that they weren't the original source. I got the source from Rebel Media, and they got permission for the copyright. So, like, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's irrelevant. But you see, it's blocked in all territories. Blocked. So they try to limit the amount of people who can see that racist view of this reprehensible person. And it's really anti-Canadian in its sentiment, I tell you. That is not the right way to behave for people. Especially her. I wonder how many people are watching that social TV show. But, you know, it deeply, deeply angers me that they're trying to cover themselves, blocked in all territories, and prevent me from bringing that actual clip to you. That really upsets me. And, you know, copyright claim, all countries. Hang on a second. All countries. Some visibility restrictions on your video. However, your channel is not affected. Well, my friends, if you're watching this, just know this kind of entitlement nonsense is really disturbing in our time. Her opinion doesn't count for anything, but nevertheless it's there and it's celebrated. And I would ask you, wherever you are, if you're watching this, go against this kind of mockery of Canadian values. Don't stand by and let it happen, because you know, Canadians are very understanding people. We're very patient, but I mean, at a certain point, you have to take an insult as it is, and there has to be some kind of rebuttal against that. So, I thank you for your time and your attention, and take care. Bye-bye.